For 33 years, a country mailman walked the same road. And every day, without fail, he came home with his pockets full of stones. He was not a sculptor, not an architect. He had no training and no ambition anyone could name. He was, by every account, an entirely ordinary man. His name was Ferdinand Cheval. He was born in 1836 in a small village in the east of France to a family of peasant farmers who expected nothing unusual of him. He left school early, he worked the land, apprenticed as a baker, and by his 30s had settled into the one job that would define the rest of his life. He became a postman. In 1867, he took the mail route out of Haute-Rives, in the Drôme. Every day he walked it, more than 30 kilometers, on foot, alone, in every kind of weather. 30 kilometers is a long way to be alone with your thoughts. Day after day, year after year, the same fields, the same silence, the same road unspooling under his boots. To keep from going mad with boredom, Cheval began to dream. He built palaces in his head, impossible, magnificent things, and then, at the end of each day, he let them dissolve. For over a decade, that was all they ever were. Daydreams, a private theater to pass the empty hours. And then, one spring day in 1879, he tripped. His foot caught on a stone in the road. He nearly fell. Annoyed, he bent down to look at the thing that had almost put him on the ground. And he stopped. The stone was strangely shaped. Beautiful even, sculpted by water and time into something no human hand could have made. He turned it over in his fingers and he slipped it into his pocket. The next day, he came back to the same spot. He found another and another. The road, he realized, was full of them. Small marvels lying in the dust, waiting for someone to finally notice. Soon his pockets weren't enough. He carried a basket. Then the basket wasn't enough either, so he brought a wheelbarrow, which he pushed along his 30-kilometer route, gathering stones as he delivered the mail. He had no plan, not one he could explain. He only knew that he had to gather them, and that he had, at last, to begin to build. He worked at night. After walking all day, he would light an oil lamp and labor in his garden until the early hours, setting stone into wet mortar by hand. He slept a few hours and rose again to walk the route. Then he built again, and again. For decades, this was the shape of his days: the mail, the stones, the lamp, the mortar. The village noticed. Of course they noticed. A grown man, hauling rocks home in a wheelbarrow, building something no one understood in his own back garden. They called him mad, the village idiot. Children laughed, neighbors tapped their heads when he passed. He heard all of it. He kept building. He never fully explained himself, not even to his own family. When people asked what he was making, he could only gesture at the thing rising in his garden and say that a dream had told him to. What he was making had no name and no precedent. It came out of his own head, and out of the postcards he collected, glimpses of a world he would never see. In the magazines of the day, he found photographs of far-off places: Hindu temples, Egyptian tombs, a Swiss chalet, a mosque, the wild architecture of Algiers and Cairo. He had never left the Drôme. He never would leave. So he built all of it, every place he had ever dreamed of, into a single impossible structure in a French country garden. Grottoes and towers, giants and animals carved out of stone, staircases that led nowhere, temples stacked upon temples. It grew longer and taller with every passing year. He called it the Palais Idéal, the ideal palace. Into its walls he pressed shells and fossils and the strange stones from his road, binding them with lime and cement and wire. And he carved words into it, messages to no one and to everyone. In creating this rock, he wrote, I wanted to prove what willpower can do. 10,000 days, 10,000 nights, reads another inscription. He was keeping count. He knew exactly what this was costing him, and he paid it anyway. It cost him more than time. His daughter Alice died young, a grief he carried in silence, and, some say, into the stones themselves. He built through it. It may have been the only way he knew how to grieve. He was no longer a young man. The stones did not get any lighter, the nights did not get any shorter. But an old postman kept lifting rock onto rock, alone by lamplight, year after year. The palace grew to nearly 90 feet long and 3 stories high. A hand-built cathedral of daydreams, made by one man, with no help, no blueprint, and no reason anyone else could see. And then, in 1912, 33 years after he tripped on a stone in the road, Ferdinand Cheval set down his trowel. It was finished. He was 76 years old. He had done the impossible thing, and almost no one cared. There was one thing more that he wanted. He wished to be buried inside the palace he had spent his life building, to rest at the very end within his own dream. The law forbade it. In France, you could not simply be buried in your own garden. And so Cheval, now nearly 80 years old, did the only thing he had ever known how to do. He started again. In the village cemetery, he began to build his own tomb, a mausoleum in the same wild style, by the same trembling hands. It took him 8 more years. He finished it in 1922. 2 years later, in 1924, Ferdinand Cheval died and was laid to rest inside the very last thing he ever built. He died believing himself a failure in the eyes of the world, an old madman who had wasted his life on a pile of rocks. He was wrong. In the years after his death, the artists found him. The Surrealists, André Breton, Max Ernst, saw in the Palais Idéal exactly what they had been chasing. A pure imagination, unschooled and unafraid. Picasso sketched it. Writers made pilgrimages to it. The man his village had mocked became, quietly, a hero to the very people who understood what he had actually done. In 1969, France made it official. The culture minister, André Malraux, declared the Palais Idéal a protected national monument, the work of an untrained postman, ranked among the treasures of France. Today, hundreds of thousands of people travel to a small town in the Drôme just to stand in front of it, to look at what one ordinary man built, alone, out of the stones he found on his way to work. He had no talent anyone recognized, no plan, no permission. He had only an idea that would not let him go, and 33 years of refusing to put it down. Sometimes that is all it takes. Sometimes that is everything.